Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Tracy Lawrenson of Crackerjack Marketing will be our presenter today. It'll be on website development and maintenance. The session is being recorded. It will be on the Smith website in a few days. If you have questions during the presentation, put them in the chat window and we'll get them passed along to Tracy. Also in the chat window later this morning, we'll put a link to our annual Entrepreneurial Bridge event in Albert Lea next month. You can follow the link for more information and to register. Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation is a donor-based foundation investing in economic growth in the 20 counties of South Central and Southeastern Minnesota. The foundation has provided more than $136 million in grants, loans, and programmings in the region in the past 36 years. Smith's key interests include economic development and early childhood and community vitality. And now Tracy Lawrenson. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. How is everyone doing? You can say that in the chat, just testing our mute capabilities. Just kidding. I hope everyone's doing well. It's a little rainy here. Hopefully the sun will come out later and we'll have a very wonderful Wednesday morning. Well, thanks for the introduction. My name again is Tracy Lawrenson. I own a marketing firm called Crackerjack, and I have the honor of presenting to all of you today. So hopefully you'll come away with a little aha moments. Just real quickly about me and my organization. I have really just been in marketing for about 20 years and held primarily executive level positions in management and in marketing. I've done speaking engagements for a number of years, probably mostly known in this area for CETA, in the Southeast Minnesota area anyway, for CETA, Energy Issues Summit up in the metro area, nonprofits like the Optimist Club, March of Dimes, etc. And now, of course, some work here with Smith. I get asked all the time, what is Crackerjack and what do you do? So essentially, I'm a marketing, sales, and analytics firm. And really how I do that is I implement with a purposeful strategy. I utilize marketing plans, your company sales efforts, and then I measure them with analytics. And then we make educated decisions on how to move forward with your initiatives. I always get asked, what does Crackerjack mean? This is the actual definition, but to me, it's really just about those business partnerships that are remarkable, wonderful, and superior. And that's a little bit about me. All right, so moving on to what we are here for today, and this is a website development and maintenance, and I'm just going to take you on a little bit of a journey here, and we'll talk about an overview of the website, different website platforms, some tips for success, how to get started with making a design or a redesign, and then some tips on how to keep your site safe. All right, so really, what is a website? It's not just a store on your computer. It's really an opening to your storefront. It's a digital opening to your storefront. And there's different types of ways that you can build a website. The two primary ways are closed source, which is really more of a coding, a proprietary system. Usually they're on a specific server that independent individual or company creates. And the benefits of a closed source type of application are security. They have a much higher level of security because they're housed typically on a virtual server or an interior server that's not open to the public. And the customization is really the key to that. There's really endless creativity. Again, this is all based on, the level of expertise your developer has, but essentially they don't have any constraints from the tool itself. Areas of caution, I would tell you, are expense. Typically, they're a little bit more expensive to build because of that customary information. The ability to update is typically limited for the end user. So for you as a business owner, small business owner, maybe your marketing department might not have the ability to make all of the updates that you'd like to make. And then it's non-transferable. So if you decide that you don't want to work with this organization anymore, move the hosting somewhere else, etc., because it's built in a proprietary system, they're not transferable. So if you try to transfer that to a different hosting company, most likely that website will not function the way that it had in the past. Essentially, it'll break. Now, there's also open source, which is a very common type of way to build websites. And an open source, the benefits of that are opposite, right? It's less expensive because you can use tools that are already built out there. You have a lot of ability to update. That's one of the main reasons people use an open source type of system, is because it allows a lot of easily updated information, photos, text, etc. And it can be transferable to other hosting companies. So as long as they support whatever open source application that you're using, which is very robust. I mean, if it's open source, it's pretty easy to transfer those hosting to different companies. And you can also transfer that to different developers as long as they're familiar with that type of application, that open source application. The cautions, security. So again, the opposite, right? And it's less secure. And I'll get into that a little bit deeper in just a moment and explain what that kind of means to you. The creativity and functionality can be limited. You can certainly add in some custom coding, but that does offer some limitations, or maybe some issues that could take place down the road. And then plugins. So plugins provide various tools, security, functionality, things like that. But really, to get the site typically to an area that you would be comfortable with, that you'd be happy with as a small business owner, you're going to utilize some plugins. So those are the two main sources. Actually, a lot of times, even if you do have a custom or proprietary closed source type of development, they may utilize some open source applications. So there's dual applications as well. And of course, WordPress is certainly the monster in this arena. So I'll give you some stats on what that monster really means. So 64.5% of the total website share uses some form of WordPress. In addition to that, 40.6% of all websites are actually built in WordPress. And 30% of Fortune 100 companies also utilize WordPress. These are companies like Bloomberg, Nike, the New York Times, etc. So it really is this powerhouse, WordPress. And just to full disclosure, I'm not selling you on WordPress today. There's lots of opportunities and tools. I'm just giving you the information from a statistical standpoint and delivering that to you. So just wanted to mention that. So anyway, it certainly is one of the main reasons that WordPress does stand out, and where a lot of the proprietary systems use it, is in blogs. It really became this powerhouse by being really robust in the blog arena, and then it transferred into utilizing a content management system. And a content management system is essentially ways that you can make updates to your website without having to know code. So this is where they share a lot of that information. So in fact, this is how robust it is. So sharing WordPress's or other organizations, other platforms, content management system, WordPress by far 12 times more popular than any other type of content management system. So 65.2% of all content management systems are within the WordPress platform. 20.1 others, so that's probably like most of that is proprietary systems. And then you can see how it just immediately tapers off from there. So again, that system is very, very robust. So those are the different types of applications and how those are used. Let's talk about getting started. So some basics here when it comes to building a website. So first, I would encourage you to work with someone that you really can trust and that can help you with those types of questions. So they should be able to tell you as you have a conversation with them, what is the right type of platform for me? Should I use a closed source? Should I use an open source? What does a dual source sort of look like? And is that the best solution for my needs? And they should be able to answer that. Whether they can build in any of those is a different conversation. So make sure you find someone that you trust. Make sure that you have an objective. What is the reason that you're building a website or redesigning a website? What do you want your visitors, your traffic to do when they get there? So here's a very easy example of a clear call to action. Weber Grills just wants you to buy grills from them. That is their number one goal. It is right there when you go to their page. So be clear about what your expectations are from a visitor standpoint. Do you want them to find out more information? Do you want them to watch your videos? Do you want them to subscribe to something, etc.? But make sure you have that very clear goal in mind before you get started. My favorite is persona development and really keeping this in focus, because I think this is an area that gets lost very, very quickly. We're so integrated in our businesses that sometimes we forget about the consumer, who our actual customers are. So there are lots of different types of consumers. You may have 2 or 3 different types of consumers, and you want to make sure that your website is developed for them to easily get around. So, a family is going to have different expectations and want to maneuver on a website differently than maybe, a window shopper that's spontaneous, that only wants to see that buy now button, or some executives wanting to do some research, or maybe it's children focused, maybe it's a sports enthusiast, maybe they're leisure travelers, maybe they're in that retirement phase, right, John? And are doing more of the reading. They want to be engaged in blogs and understand a little bit more about some information that's out there. So just really keep in mind that persona. They're so important. And again, I think that's one of the most quickly forgotten elements of website development. To get started, I encourage you to get a website roadmap. So essentially, this is your navigational structure. So you'll lay out, once I'm on my homepage, where do I want people to go? What are the things that, on that, if I'm going to scroll down, what do I want them to see first? What are the calls to action? What page are they going to end up on, etc. So this is your mapping, your navigational map before you build anything else. If you have a very complicated site, you can do a card sort. A card sort is actually a really fun activity, believe it or not. And what it does is I've been involved in many of them. And what it does is actually takes the business and the employees out of the decision-making process. So you would invite maybe, great customers or vendors, maybe family, business associates of some sort to this event called a card sort. And essentially what they're going to do is help you build that navigational structure that we talked about just a moment ago, that road map. From their perspective, how, if they were a consumer, what makes sense to them. So it's really a powerful way to get that done and to develop your navigational structure. Then I would encourage you, once you get that all figured out, to do a website mock-up. So this is really fun. So no coding is done at this time. Nothing is clickable. Essentially what you're doing is just laying out, starting with the homepage, what that overall look and feel is going to be like, what those calls to action are, where you want people to be guided to. You pick your colors and all of those types of things at this level. You can do this with a piece of paper and a pen and scratch it all out if you want to. You don't need a great graphic designer to put this together for you. Obviously this is put together nicely, but you really don't need that. You can get a notepad and do this. You can even remember when when I was in elementary school, some of you are probably not remembering this, but we used to have to take out clippings of like newspapers and magazine images and create, our storyboard from that. you can certainly do that to create your homepage mockup, whatever it takes. And to me, it's, you kind of think about this when you're laying out that navigational structure, sort of like riding a bike. So essentially what you're doing is softly guiding your visitors, your web visitors, down the road that you want them to go to, nice and safely, for you to reach your objectives. So that's essentially the process from start to finish, and really keeping those kinds of things in mind. I hope that's helpful for you. So let's talk about some basic website development information. So I'm going to share with you here, this is actually my website. And you can see, you know, some jargon up at the top above my logo and navigation. And essentially those are tools for you to be able to make changes or even build when you get started of your website. So this is what we call the Inline Editor. You're actually looking at the page and being able to see different types of things. This here is a customizer. So this is a plugin that's able to do that. And here I can build out, you know, the fonts that I want, the colors that I want, how I want my navigation colors to be. Do I want my logo here? What does my footer look like? Do I want 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns? All of that kind of information. So it's the basic way to get that overall structure of your website built. So this is a customizer here. So back to the Inline Editor, there's various ways once you have your website built, or you can even build through here. So it's a little bit visually easier to do. So essentially in this snapshot, I'm just hovered over that picture to the right. And you can see that there's buttons, a blue button, mustard button, and a green button there. So those are opportunities for me to make changes within this specific view. So this again is called the Inline Editor. It's a lot easier for people to do because you can physically see, once I replace that image, if I want to do that here, what it will look like before it's published live. So it's a great way to utilize that feature. There's also the back-end editor. This is where I would spend most of my time. Typically a developer would. You can get a preview as well once you have something coded, but this gives you a lot more opportunity to make those customizations. So this visual, as you see it right here, is actually that same page that we looked at a second ago with the Inline Editor. So if you kind of see towards the bottom there, you'll see the content started, an image, but this is how that page is laid out and structured. So there's lots of ways to do 1 column, 3 column, etc., to build what you want that to see or to be visually. You can also see there on the left, there's a lot of menu items, and this is where you have that opportunity to customize and to really build out that website. This is again with that Inline Editor or the WordPress open source type of information. So this is just a quick snapshot of if I wanted to make a content change, what does that look like? And so you can see it's really quite similar to like a Word document, right? You can bold, you can change the font, you can, add a link, etc. So it's very user friendly from that capability. And I just want you to see from a proprietary system how that relates. So this is a proprietary, a closed source website build, and you can see from a content change application, their content management system to change content. It looks very similar as well. The same type of, WordPress look, or excuse me, Word document type of look and feel, change your fonts, bold, etc. All of that information is right there. So, there's some content management systems proprietary that aren't as easy to use, but there are some that are pretty similar to those open source applications. So I would encourage you, if you are considering a closed source proprietary system, ask what their content management system looks like before you dive into it, and make sure that it's easy enough for you to make those changes if you're planning on making those changes. All right, I want to talk about plugins for just a moment here. So again, plugins are ways to enhance not only a WordPress or an open source type of application. Plugins can also be used on a closed source application. A lot of times they're used for security or for blogs. Those are typical ones. But again, I wanted to share with you some of the top ones. So these are, oops, excuse me. These are the top WordPress built plugins. Again, they can sometimes be used for other systems, but Yoast SEO is number one. Almost 20% of all WordPress websites have this plugin on them. And again, it's just an SEO search engine optimization tool. WP Bakery is next, and that's an inline editor tool. So where I was showing you that picture and the contact with the green and the mustard and buttons, that's the inline editor application. There's other ones, but this is just a very within the top 5 or excuse me, 6 plugins that are out there. Elementor is the application I showed you on my website where you have that customization on the left-hand panel there. Jetpack is a security and monitoring tool. And then the rest of those, Visual Composer and WordPress Bakery, those are again just ways that you can make edits visually on the inline editor application. And the Monster Insights is sort of like Google analytics type of application. So again, those are just the most common. Those are the top WordPress plugins that are used. How many plugins are out there? Unbelievable. There's 58,000 plugins available for WordPress alone. And from an activation standpoint, Yoast SEO that we were just talking about a moment ago and Jetpack that we were talking about a moment ago have together over 5 million applications installed. So those are very, very robust tools. When you're looking at adding a plugin to your website, this is just a visual of what that would be from a search capacity. But what is really, really important is actually taking a look at that specifically. So I just zoomed into Yoast SEO as an example here. And you can see what I want you to take a look at really is, it'll tell you a little bit of information. What does this application do? To the right, you can see activate. So if I wanted to install it, that's what I would do. More details will give you more information about what that tool does. And will also tell you information about app updates and fixes, all of those kinds of things, which are really, really important. Down to the bottom left there, you'll see the ratings, the star reviews. So make sure when you're looking at adding some type of plugin that not only do they have good reviews, but they have a number of good reviews. So Yoast SEO obviously is 27,000. I would be cautious if there was 27 5-star reviews. And then underneath that 5+ million active installations. So this is a very widely used active tool. Again, I would just make a little caution if that was, in the hundreds of active applications before I downloaded that. To the right, you'll see last updated 1 day ago. This is extremely important. You want to make sure that whatever plugin you're deciding to add to your website development, that they are actively looking at security and on fixes and patches and making sure that it's always up to date with current code. And we'll talk about security issues in a little bit, but this is one really important one to make sure that they're actively monitoring and updating their application. And then the last there at the bottom, the check mark it's just saying, is this application or is this plugin, compatible with the version of WordPress that I'm currently going to install it on. And this, that would say the same thing if it was, Wix or whatever, Spotify, whatever application that you're using there. So those are really take a good look at those things before you decide if you want to download them. Two of my favorite ones that I'll share with you are Jetpack. And the reason I like Jetpack, or what it really does, I guess, is performance tracking. So similar to like a Google Analytics, with some additional features in it, and that's right inside your WordPress application dashboard. So you can see all that right in there. You don't have to go somewhere else like Google Analytics to find your information. Site monitoring, so it'll tell you or can send you notifications if your site is down, kind of a big deal. Protection, it protects against malware, backups, anti-spam, and can also help protect against attacks. And then also social media sharing. So you can schedule posts within this application. And I should say some of these plugins, there's a free version and a paid version. So just be aware there if you're downloading one and it's not doing all the features that you wanted it to do, it may be because you need to have the paid version turned on, just like anything else, right? Okay, and then the other one I really like is Backdraft. And what Backdraft is, it's an offsite app backup, and you can schedule it to be automatic. So say I want it to back up my website once a week or whatever it is, once a month if I'm not making a lot of updates to it. You can back it up on the fly, which is really important. So if I want to install a new plugin, or I'm making, there was a WordPress update that I wanted to run, I'm going to run a on the fly backup first to make sure whatever I'm doing to my site doesn't break it. And if it does break it, I can quickly restore back to where it was just moments ago. And you can back it up to multiple locations. So for me, I have my clients' websites backed up on my Google Docs, but I also have it backed up on whatever application they want it backed up on. So it's nice to be able to have dual backups out there for features. Quick restoration, just like I was talking about a moment ago. If something broke, I can quickly restore it back in just a click of a button. Honestly, I can go back to a specific day. So let's say you were hacked or whatever, and you looked at your website last on April 12th and it was fine. You can go to that backup and just update it immediately, and your site will be at that stage in just a moment's notice. So it's very nice that way. And again, it's universally compatible. So you can run back or house your backups on Dropbox, S3, Google Drive, Rockspace, FTPs, SFTPs, email. You can send it an email. So there's lots of different ways that it can be backed up, which is really, really nice. So those are two of my favorites. What I would like to share with you also is just the importance of maintenance and how to do that. So really this comes in from not only a usability standpoint, but also a security standpoint. So I suggest doing self-tests and doing, so I have them kind of categories. So monthly, I would run tests like a spell checker, broken link checker, I would actually manually check your forms, your contact forms, making sure they're going to the right place, making sure that there's no errors in them, making sure whoever they're going to is checking them, etc. And the overall visitor experience. And this one, I think, is one that gets lost quite a bit. We're just so ingrained at doing our work every single day. We don't go back to our website and say, is that user experience what I intended it to be, or can we make some modifications and adjust that? One little tip I'll give you is, maybe you don't, as the business owner, don't always do that. Maybe you have assign it to other people once a month. So maybe you have your sales department go through a visitor experience once. Maybe you have your accountant go through a visitor experience once, etc. But get some different eyes on that and make sure that experience is really what you expect it to be, that it's easy. Remember guiding that little bike ride, that they're getting to where you want that to happen as quickly as possible. Just a quick story about this. People do this with their storefront as well. So I have a dental office, and once a month, they have all their employees come in and together, and they walk around the dental office, and they take their blinders off from an employee standpoint and put their visitor experience on, and they say, okay, that picture is crooked, or there's some cobwebs up there, or whatever it is, but they all walk around together and they purposely think about that from a visitor experience, and they make sure that their office is exactly how they want their visitors to experience their office. Your website can be the exact same, and it should be the exact same. There's lots of people that go to your website. All right, quarterly, running a mobile optimization check. Of course, we all know that mobile is a huge thing right now. So you can run a mobile optimization check, and I'll tell you your speed and your load time of images, which is really important. You can run an image analysis speed test, which is a desktop version as well. So again, getting those images to load. Typically, images are what bog a site down. So that's why there's lots of opportunities to just run these tools, and it'll tell you like this image needs to be optimized. So it's very helpful in that capacity. You can run a performance and marketing grader test. And again, this will just give you some information on like ways that you can improve your site. And then there's also a web accessibility evaluation. So if ADA compliance is important to you and your customers, you can run an evaluation. It'll tell you, how you rate, good, fair, whatever. And then if there's areas of improvement, it'll give you those opportunities to improve. It'll say, hey, if you do this, that'll help. And I should tell you as well, John will be sending out, I think John will be sending out a free toolkit that I put together, and these are in there. So it'll be a persona development. We talked about just a little bit ago about your customers, how to develop those customers and then talk to them on your marketing channels, whether that's website or other channels, but it'll also be links to all of these areas of maintenance. And then it'll also have that marketing roadmap sample for you. So those will all be in that coming up later today. All right, so site health check as well. So some systems like WordPress, depending on the plugins that you have installed, can also do internal health checks. And so this is an example of one, and it's saying that you have, 2 items. Your site's good, but there are 2 items you might want to, take note of. So those 2 items are plugins. So it is saying here that I have a couple of plugins on this particular site that could use an update. So to do those, and again, updates are really important to make sure that we're patching, security fixes, all of those kinds of things. And then second to that, it also says that I have plugins installed on this website that we're not using. And not that that's a bad thing, but it can pose a security threat if these if these plugins aren't maintained. So if you don't need them, just get rid of them. So that's what this is telling me here. And very same thing from a theme standpoint. So this is telling me again that I have an opportunity to update the theme, which is essentially the shell of how this website is built out before it got customized. And that in the tool itself, in the dashboard, there are some themes that probably came with the system that we just didn't use. So again, get rid of them if you're not using them. They just bog the site down and could potentially have some vulnerabilities that just aren't needed. So again, just uninstall anything that you don't need. So those are helpful tools to maintaining your website. All right, so cybersecurity, I know it's always like scary. It's there, it's getting more and more, the opportunities are out there more and more all the time. So I just want to prepare you with a few things. One, it's very expensive for small businesses. And these stats here are defining small businesses with 500 or less employees. So just kind of keep that in mind. But it's $3 million on average per incident. So really being secure with your data, not just your website, but how they get into your data is really vital. And on average, it actually goes up to $5 million when a breach is associated with a business email. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you prepare your staff to not open emails that have things in them, go to trainings, etc. That's not what today's about, but I'm just giving you some information about this. In the last year, 63% of small businesses said they've actually experienced some type of data breach, which is really crazy and scary. And from a consumer standpoint, 56% of consumers are actually scared about their privacy. They are nervous about what websites do, social media does with tracking their information and then using their personal information. So, have a privacy policy, make sure you're not asking for information that you don't need, all of those kinds of things, because your consumers do care about it, but they do also want targeted, relevant information. So there's a little bit of a balance when it comes to tracking. And so what's the most common forms of attack? PHP code is actually the most common form of website attacks. And really it's I guess against a brute force attacks where someone learns your password. So aside from that, just, making sure that you have your updates, your themes and your plugins and everything updated. But essentially what PHP is, it's a code that runs websites. It can run your plugins, it can run your themes, your application itself. And so it's really a big deal. And it's essentially how the web browsers or the website itself talks and is able to maneuver. And the top areas of vulnerability specific to WordPress are plugins. So again, make sure that you are using a plugin that's safe and that you keep it up to date. Most attacks come from plugins, and then followed by very far distant theme at 6%, and the core software itself. So that would be like WordPress itself or the content management system itself or something like that. Those are where they come from, a variety. And then not just financially is cybersecurity an issue or attack an issue. It comes with a downtime as well. So this is a chart just showing, based off of the number of employees that you have, if you have 200 to 500 employees, the green, blue, and then what color that is, a dark blue. Those are the hours in which, on average, a website is down once they've had some type of breach. So you can see, honestly, 250 to 500, the 5 to 1,000, and 1,000 to 10,000 kind of have that similar bar chart organization to it. But when you get to the 10,000 plus employees, you can see that kind of shifts a bit, where when you have a lot of employees, you probably have a lot of people monitoring your website. And so the level of hours, that 0 to 4 hours, is much higher than the other hours, the 5 to 16 or 17 plus. And again, it's probably just a monitoring tool is what I'm guessing. Speculating there. All right, so how do we reduce our risk? Really important, right? Keep your systems up to date. I can't say that enough. If you have an old website that's not in current code, you probably want to consider a rebuild, or at least getting it up to date of sort to reduce this. Current PHP code is 8.1.6. But if you have any PHP version 7.3 or older, it is extended its end of life and it is physically not supported. So you have a huge opportunity to be breached if you're running anything 7.3 or older. So I encourage you to take a look at that. If you don't know where to find that on your applications, call your hosting company. They will be able to tell you what PHP code you're running. WordPress, if you're in WordPress, actually is 6.0.1. They actually just had an update about a week or so ago. So I had to update the slide here yesterday to get that information to you, but it is 6.0.1. How can you, and then of course, again, reiterating, updating your themes and your plugins. And some some applications also have patches. So they know that there is an update that needs to be done, but they can't completely update the install of a plugin. And so they'll do a temporary patch. And so those patches help with that security. A quick fix essentially is what those are. So it's okay to run those typically. How can you also reduce it? If you have forms, install a reCAPTCHA. Google reCAPTCHA is free. There's 3 different versions, so there's one of those 3 should be compatible with your website build. Having an SSL certificate, your hosting company again would supply this to you. If you're ever on a website, you should see up in that corner where you type in that URL, a lock or a shield is another way to determine that. Google does a really good job. Safari does a pretty good job about notifying you if you're going to a site that's not secure. So you want to make sure that your website visitors don't experience some type of error that says, hey, the site is not secure. Are you sure you want to proceed? Because most likely they're not going to proceed then. Another application that you can add is SiteLock. There's other ones that are out there, but essentially a firewall monitoring tool. So you can get this, there's different levels of SiteLock or different applications here that monitor and protect against bots and traffic and all of those kinds of things. They also, this particular one also can save with bandwidth. So it does some caching type of things that can be helpful for speed. So this is one application that you can do. The great thing about this is that you'll get a report once a week that says, hey, this is what we blocked. You'll get notified if there's an actual attempt of a breach in areas that you can make modifications. So that's helpful. And then there's also another one that's very, very popular. This is called WordFence, and it's a firewall application specifically designed for WordPress. And it literally blocks billions of requests from blacklisted IP addresses and attackers that are attempting to exploit vulnerabilities. So they have, they monitor that and keep a list of IP addresses and different vulnerabilities. And so that is what's robust about this specific firewall. And you can see there's lots of reporting that you get from it as well.
Tracy, I'd like to interrupt for just a second. We have a question from Kathleen wondering how she can check the tagging of images on their site to make sure they are optimized for search.
Yeah, you bet. So in that toolkit that I'm going to send to you, there'll be a link that you can click on, and then you just type in your URL and it'll share that information with you. So it's the optimizer image one.
And every attendee will receive that from Smith in the next couple of days.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Thanks for the question. Any more?
If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box.
Thank you. All right. So until then, we'll keep going here. So what's trending now? Just kind of keep some things on your radar. Are, of course, voice assist. This gets more and more robust every couple of months when I do a presentation like this. But essentially, almost 1 out of 4 internet users say that they've used some type of voice assist to find information within the last week. And you can even see, the 55 and over are at 20%. So, it's not a younger generation, older generation. It's really across the board from a demographic standpoint. Image search is getting more and more popular as well. This is an example of Pinterest, Amazon's visual tool, but Pinterest has a visual lens tool. Google search has one as well. You may have noticed when you've been on Google lately, if you look in that search bar, there'll be a little camera button. That's what that feature is doing. So if you take a picture of something, it'll say, hey, is this what you were looking for, and help you along the way. Chat boxes, chat now, very, very popular. As a matter of fact, 2022 is trended to say that 70% of websites will be looking to adopt some type of chat feature. And from a consumer standpoint, 92% of consumers say they've actually felt satisfied with their experience when they've done a live chat. So, the tools are getting better and better, and consumers are expecting that. In addition, to take that a step further, 40% of consumers actually expect a live chat to be on a website in this coming year. So you might want to think about that. E-commerce, interesting trend here. 50% of e-commerce revenue sales are actually coming from marketplaces. So if you have an e-commerce site, you might want to just consider or think about areas in which people may be searching or viewing where your product or service could be shared, not just on your website, but getting them to your website to purchase. But here's one that I really am fascinated with is alternate payments. Gaining huge traction. So these are like Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, Google Pay, all of those kinds of things. They're on a serious rise. And that's expected to continue to the point of in 2023. So just in a couple of months from now, right now, becoming the most popular payment method. And the reason for this, I think a lot is security, when it's just another layer that helps protect your credit cards and those kinds of things, the fees associated with it, et cetera. And obviously from a consumer standpoint, ease of use, right? Because it already has that information in there. I just put in my password and credentials that's attached to, and I don't have to put in a credit card information. So that's becoming very, very popular, again, to the point of being most popular over regular payments in just next year. And then horizontal scrolling or SPA, single page application, really content just being displayed, sort of like that mock-up that I did that I showed you a little bit ago, where things are just in sequential order. And this is really just because we have so much usage on mobile. People are used to scrolling now versus clicking. So those are just the trends that are coming about here that I wanted to share with you. And then we'll go into some pro tips as you're building out your site or getting a site redesigned, or just making improvements to your current site. Just make sure it's really, really easy and it's organized, the pages, the content, etc. That it speaks to me. So this is where that persona development comes back into play. You know, talk in the words that your customers use versus your internal words. So when I was just a moment ago displaying something that said SPA, you may not know what that means. So talk in those, make sure that you're using words that your consumers use. And that also helps with search as well. So utilize those terminologies. So, you know, as an example, if you're a realtor or mortgage company, you know, people really aren't interested in a mortgage, right? But they do want to buy a home. So just kind of think about that a little bit in those contexts. Images, kind of your question here, make sure you're using alt tags and they're optimized. So an example, what I mean by that is when you upload an image to your website, content management system, whether it's a proprietary one or an open source one, you should have an opportunity to list an alt text or alt tag. Both of those are intertwined, and really think about what you want that to be. So that's not just from an ADA compliance standpoint. You know, when someone sees that image, this is what the information they'll see instead, or hear instead, excuse me. But this is also, robots can read this. So this helps with your content searchability as well. So in this example, I could have easily put my alt text as image of plane, but that doesn't help this client that is in aerospace and defense. This specific unit is a RQ-9 remotely piloted aircraft, or an RPV. So again, really don't just plop those in there and make some generic information up about that image, or even worse, don't put an alt tag in there. Put one in there, put one that makes sense and that helps with your search ability. Links, internal and external, have them, you know, those are your calls to action buttons. Shop now, that's a internal link, right? You're getting them somewhere, but you may have internal or external links that are helpful as well. Maybe it's a book now button, like I have on my page, or maybe it's you're a part of this chamber, or maybe you support these nonprofits. Those are external links that help as well. So make sure that they're there, and then run those reports to make sure they're continually working. External links can also be your social media channels. So just think about that as well. Visually, make sure that you have very clear headlines, Use of video obviously is very popular. Clear calls to action. What do you want that visitor to do when they get to your site? Make it very, very easy and clear for them. I'll also just from an SEO standpoint, remind you that, or share with you that websites are read based off of how that criteria is listed. So if you have a headline, you've labeled it in your code that this is a headline, that gives precedent to the content that's below it. So, just think about that as you're laying your web page out. If there's a way to utilize a searchable word in your headline, I would encourage you to do that. KISS, same method, right? Keep it simple. Lots of, and it doesn't, when I say clean white space, I don't necessarily mean it has to be white, but just space in general. Allow some spacing between, visual pictures or content, etc. Make sure you have clear sections, that it's not just like a big run-on sentence where, a person knows that they've met or is sent to a new section of your page as they're scrolling. And have structured navigation. So even if you have a one-page site, make sure that that's structured, or using the hamburger buttons there. Make sure that that's structured very easily for someone to get from point A to point B. Continually update your content, your images, your security. Huge, can't say that security portion of it enough. And then when you're deciding to work with someone, really be clear in your contract who is responsible for what. The number one lagger of building a website when you're working with a contractor is always content. Who's writing the content? Where is that content coming from? A web developer probably doesn't know the business as well as you do, but you might not be comfortable writing content for a website. So just make sure that you know how that's going to lay out. Again, those are the biggest stickler of getting a website live is that one, and then followed by images. Who's going to get those images? Where are they coming from? How do we share them, etc. And then hosting, who's responsible for hosting? Do you have a hosting company already? You just want them to relaunch this website. You don't like your hosting company, you want to move somewhere else, you want a proprietary system, whatever. Be clear on who is taking care of that hosting responsibility. And when you're looking at hosting, just so you know too, you can have more than one responsible party. So if you want your developer, which should have access to your hosting information to be able to make updates and certainly other things, but you as a business owner can also and should have administrative access to that information as well. Same with building your website out. If you're using an open source, you can have multiple administrators. So make sure you as the owner have control of your website, not just your developer. And then maintenance, again, who is going to be running those maintenances and how often. So, if you're not doing a lot of updates to your website, maybe those monthly recommendations that I had earlier go to quarterly or every other month or something like that. But just be clear on who is taking that responsibility over. It's very, very important. And why, sometimes people ask this, why do I need a website now? I have social media, I have this, I have that. Someone can find me, my Google business page, my number's right there. Why do I need a website? And really, for several reasons, but it's legitimate businesses. So for me, I didn't realize I was doing this, but I actually do this, is if I see a product or service, typically on social media, at this point, but that I'm like, oh, I really like that, but I'm nervous. Is that a legitimate business? I will, instead of clicking on them wherever I found them, assuming it's social media in my feed, I will actually go and do a Google search of that business and make sure that they have a website and they're a legitimate business before I make any kind of transaction with them. So this can really help legitimize you as a small business. And your website doesn't have to be, 70 pages. It can be a one-page scroller, but this is what offers legitimacy to your business and your organization. Plus it's there 24/7, right? Another reason is 93, this is a crazy number, of online experiences start with a search engine. So it's a really huge, and making sure that you're able to be found is important. Businesses around, revolve around customer service now more than ever, especially with the pandemic. I can't tell you how many people, friends, family, etc., that are like, oh my gosh, that customer experience was so terrible, blah, 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 blah. Your website can help with those customer experiences. So utilize that the best that you can. It can also be a sales tool. Even if you're a one person organization, it can be a sales tool for you, not necessarily. Contact forms are a great one, chat now, great one, robots, those kinds of things are super helpful. But it also can be an opportunity to gain marketing exposure, like email marketing. And right now, 80% of businesses utilize some kind of email marketing. So websites are an opportunity for you to gain email addresses as well. And of course, customer support. One statistic I just find interesting, and it's probably higher now, is that 42% of consumers say that they stopped using a brand when they've had a bad experience. And so it's amazing. It takes a lot of work for us to get customers. And so the last thing you want to do is give them a bad customer experience. And then they leave, half of them leave quickly before doing additional transactions with you. So it's so disheartening to have that. So just keep that in mind. All right. And that's really all I have. I'm like so close, John. 2 minutes to an hour. I think we got there pretty good. This is my contact information if you have any questions. John, let me know what we do if there's any out there.
Does anyone have any questions for Tracy this morning? Go ahead and put them in the chat box or unmute yourself and just ask her. Either way. And I'm not seeing anything, Tracy. So thank you for all your time this morning. Great information. Thanks everybody for attending. Have a great day.
Hopefully I didn't all overwhelm you. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.